If you're following Russian economy, you know that it's currently going through the biggest crisis since the collapse of the USSR in 1991. It is in an extremely poor shape, and the long-term forecast is negative. Today, I give you 4 personal stories from the insiders that illustrate how bad things are in Russian economy now. They illustrate that the sales in 4 industries have dropped to near zero. Real life examples. 4 stories that will shock you. And as a bonus story, I'll give you about the way the KGB operates these days. Now, what I'm going to tell you today is private and informal. You won't find it in the data released by Russian government, won't find it in any kinds of reports, at least for some time you won't. What I'm going to tell you today is coming from real people and their personal experience. I cannot fact check their words, but I've known these people, I trust them, and I personally believe that what they've told me is true. There is no reason for them to lie. A little background first. As some of you might know, I have created a support group for Russian and Ukrainian refugees called Tashkent Breakfast Club. There is currently a community of more than 1,000 people, and it's a vibrant bunch. Absolute majority are with higher education, brave, energetic, self-confident, entrepreneurial, and all are good-hearted. I call them the cream of the crop, the best Russia and Ukraine have to offer. Quite a few people are business owners and executives in companies, and they still work in Russia, some of them, not all. Quite a few still have interests in Russia, but most are trying to move their companies away to other countries. And I personally have no problem with that, as I myself was moving everyone dear to me and everything out of Russia for 11 months. It's a very long and complicated process. So, Tashkent Breakfast Club, this past weekend, and 4 people tell me their stories. Freshly baked, right out of the oven. Again, the stories are exclusive. You will not find them anywhere else. For simplicity's sake, I call them the stories of 4 Russian enterprises, and that's what they basically are. And I won't tell them the names of the companies. It's very confidential and sensitive information. Well, obviously, I think you understand. So, let's begin. Company A private manufacturing plant producing special kind of plastics used in high voltage cable casing. I think it's called cable braiding in the industry. The plant is located not too far from Moscow. The customers are the construction companies, and the owner has been in this business for over 30 years, since the 90s. According to the owner, the sales of his product, the plastics, have dropped to zero in the last 2 months. Well, last 6 weeks to be precise. They have been incredibly brutal. 0% sales. Last 6 weeks, 0% sales. They just simply died. He said it's the first time he's seen 0 sales. Even in previous crises in 1998, 2008, and 2015, the sales were there. They were small, but they were there. The reason for the sales drop is the construction industry in Russia has collapsed. Nothing is being constructed, therefore no one is using cable, and cable is not being produced. And plastic for that cable is not needed. Company B, a private manufacturer of natural gas compressor stations. It's located in Western Russia, a very old and successful company. Their products are used in natural gas transporting industry. Well, in simple words, the pipeline. The customers are companies that are a part of Gazprom Group. Natural gas in Russia is a state monopoly, as you know. One of the executives of the company, B, shared his story. Their sales are weaker than before, but not zero. Natural gas pipeline constantly needs products. All these pipelines throughout Russia, They need to be, the gas compressor stations, there are thousands of them, perhaps tens of thousands. They need to be replaced, renovated. It's a matter of operating the pipelines, the matter of safety. The trouble is not with the company B, but with its equipment, the suppliers. Other companies who manufacture equipment and the company B buys it, packages it, and creates own product, compressor stations. So other companies who manufacture equipment, gas compressors, pumps, components, etc., according to the executive, they have approached the company B and offered deep discounts. They basically are offering open books. It's a model of doing business called open book contract. A customer can see your books, and a customer can see how much you earn, what's your margin, and so forth. So they offer open books contracts to show company B that they work with 0% profit margin. The executive says it's crazy. He hasn't seen anything like that before. These suppliers willing to supply with 0% margin, so they have just enough revenue to cover the expenses, basically to cover workers' salaries. Otherwise, they'd be forced to lay workers off. Business for them, the suppliers, has stopped. Their sales dropped to zero. And now the manufacturers of natural gas equipment, are begging for work. Before I jump to company C, the third story, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone who is a part of Inside Russia community. Thank you for watching, for liking, for commenting and interacting. Thank you for the messages with good words, with good wishes, for praying along with me, and for your love. Thank you for buying me coffees at buymecoffee.com, for Patreon, PayPal. I give you a promise that despite being demonetized by Google for my stand against Russian government, I will continue telling you the truth. You have my word on that. Thank you so very much. So, the company C, a very well-known private company, one of the household names in Russia in market research and public polling. It's located in Moscow. The name of that company you probably have heard. So an executive of that company, and he works remotely from Tashkent, told me that it is right now the middle of April, and the company has 0 sales and 0 contracts portfolio. The way they work, their industry works, and that company work. They usually participate in a large number of tenders in January of every year, in the beginning of the year, and they win some tenders. They receive a few orders, sign contracts for long-term market researches for large Russian corporations, and execute contracts for the rest of the year for 9 to 11 months. So they loaded with work usually. And then on the side, they're doing some public polling here and there, side jobs. And that's how their company works, and that's how the industry works, usually. But not in 2025. This year, they are in the middle of April, and there is not one new contract. Not even tenders to participate in. Company C has enough cash for 2 months to pay salaries to the employees, and that's it. It looks like Company C will be either laying people off in 2 months or offering them to pause their employment because sales have dropped to 0 and there's no money to pay them. No companies are doing market researches any longer, but ordering market researches any longer. And all large corporations are cutting their costs and investment programs. They have switched from looking into the future, development strategies, and trying to figure out how to invest, how to penetrate new markets. From that to the survival mode. Right now, they're just trying to survive. One thing on their minds right now: how to save more. Story number 4, Company D, a private medical supply company located in the central Russia, east of Moscow, far east. It supplies medical equipment when construction of a new hospital or renovation of an existing hospital takes place. The latest information: all the constructions of new hospitals and the renovations of the existing ones have stopped. They stopped in the first part of 2024, 1 year ago. And all construction companies and suppliers waited until December of last year, 2024, and that is usually when majority of contracts are signed for the following year. December 24 came and it was empty, with an exception of Moscow. Moscow is constructing some hospitals and renovating some hospitals, but Moscow is a completely different market, and it's a closed market. It's also for a very few selected privileged companies, if you know what I mean. So some medical facilities are being built there. That's it. The rest of Russia, zilch. The reason for that is simple, the executive was told. There's no money in the federal budget for healthcare. Full stop. In April of 2025, Company D has 0 sales and in the process of laying off employees. Moreover, its competitors are doing the same. 0 money for healthcare, 0 sales for the construction companies and for the suppliers. Now, I hope you enjoyed these 4 stories, and now the bonus story. How the KGB operates these days. But before I tell it to you, I would like to remind you that every day I select 9 news that I find important and make them available to patrons of Inside Russia at patreon.com. 9 news every day, 6 days a week, 54 news every week. I feel it helps those who are interested to know what's happening in Russia and with Russia to find the information that is important, that matters and cannot be found anywhere in the mainstream media. The Patreon account of Inside Russia, I'll leave a link in the description and a pinned comment below. Please check it out and try it. Now, a real story of what happened to 2 young businessmen somewhere in Russia. And this information is so sensitive, and people can get in trouble for, telling it. So I won't even hint where remotely it happened. In Russia. So the year is 2024, and 2 fairly young guys invent a very lightweight motor, and obvious application is drones. So they want to sell it, they want to create the production, produce it, sell it, and they go to the Ministry of Defense and make a presentation. They make a pitch. The military folks look at it and do nothing. Sometime after the presentation, the businessmen receive a call. They are invited to talk, but not to the Ministry of Defense, not to the local Ministry of Industry, to the local KGB department. And they are invited there, and the officers talk to them and say that the Ministry of Defense liked their product, and the businessmen need to go to a city in the Urals, far east in Russia. Again, I won't tell you where exactly, okay, because this is sensitive, to one of those cities filled with war factories. They are to transfer their invention, all the information, to the military plant and work there as employees. The businessmen explain that they're not employees. Their offer was misunderstood. They don't want to work at some war factory in the Urals as employees. They are businessmen, and this project is their startup. They need to borrow money and build their own plant and start production of the lightweight motors to sell them to the Ministry of Defense or whoever is interested. The KGB people tell them in return, it's you who misunderstood. You are to go where you are told to submit your invention, all the paperwork and documentation, and to work as employees. No negotiating. Well, the businessman politely declined the offer. Only it turns out it wasn't the offer, it was the order. It was early 2024. Now it's 2025, and the result? Both businessmen were charged with treason for not following the order. One was able to flee Russia and hiding in South America somewhere in the jungles. Another one was arrested and sentenced. He is serving time right now. Welcome to Putin's Russia 2025. I hope you liked these stories. Now please check the real stories of real families 3 years after they escaped Russia. This documentary I worked on for 9 months. I put so many efforts into it. The link is right here. Please check it out.